I caught my wife cheating, and as if that wasn't enough, my own mother took the stand against me in court, insisting I should raise the baby because family comes first. But when the DNA results came back, the truth shattered every lie they built, and no one was ready for what was exposed. I grew up in a complicated family dynamic. I had a younger brother who passed away when he was 5, and I was 8. His death devastated my parents, especially my mother, 52, who had always envisioned having a large family. After him, doctors told her she couldn't have any more children due to complications. This loss transformed her completely. She became extremely protective of me, while simultaneously expressing regret about not having a daughter. Throughout my childhood and teenage years, she would often mention how much she wished she had a girl, sometimes even saying she had chosen names for the daughter she never had. My father, 54, tried his best to help her through the grief, but my mother's fixation on having a daughter never truly faded. She would spend hours with my female cousins, buying them gifts and treating them like the daughters she never had. It didn't bother me much growing up. I understood her pain and accepted it as part of who she was. I met Minerva, 26, 2 years ago at a company event through a mutual friend, Emma. Minerva was working as an administrative assistant at a local business, and she immediately caught my attention. She was beautiful, charming, and seemed very family-oriented. Emma later told me that Minerva had recently ended a long-term relationship and was looking to settle down. When I introduced Minerva to my parents, my mother's reaction was overwhelming. She literally cried tears of joy, saying Minerva reminded her of herself when she was younger. From that moment on, my mother became incredibly invested in our relationship. She would constantly invite Minerva over for lunch, take her shopping, and even began referring to her as the daughter she never had. Minerva seemed to embrace this attention, often spending time with my mother even when I wasn't around. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs. My mother would sometimes comment on how I needed to secure Minerva before someone else did. She would defend Minerva even in situations where I had valid concerns, like when Minerva would cancel our dates at the last minute or when she was vague about her past relationships. After dating for a year, Minerva and I got married. My mother insisted on covering the entire wedding expenses, stating she wanted her daughter to have the perfect day. She took over most of the planning, frequently making decisions without even consulting me. Minerva didn't seem to mind. In fact, she and my mother would spend hours discussing wedding details, sometimes even excluding me from conversations about my own wedding. The ceremony was small but elegant, just close family and friends. I observed Minerva seemed preoccupied during the reception, constantly checking her phone, but I dismissed it as wedding day nerves. My father pulled me aside during the reception and questioned if I was truly sure about the marriage, saying something felt amiss, but I was too caught up in the moment to truly hear his concerns. The first 6 months of marriage were relatively smooth. Minerva quit her job because she wanted to focus on starting a family. I was earning well as a software developer, so I supported her decision. She spoke about wanting to do volunteer work in the meantime, saying she wanted to contribute to the community. I thought it was a great idea. It would give her something meaningful to do while we worked on starting our family. Things began to change when her old friend, Jake, 27, moved back to town. Minerva mentioned they had been close friends in high school, but lost touch when he moved away for college. At first, she would meet him for coffee occasionally, stating she was helping him readjust to being back in town. My mother encouraged these meetings, saying it was wonderful that Minerva was assisting an old friend. But then the coffee meetings became more frequent. Minerva started coming home late, sometimes smelling of alcohol, making excuses about helping Jake with various things, helping him shop for furniture, helping him navigate the local social scene, helping him deal with family issues. When I voiced concern about how much time she was spending with him, my mother actually defended Minerva, saying I was being controlling and that Minerva was simply being kind to someone who needed help settling back home. My father tried to warn me again, pointing out how Minerva's behavior had shifted, but my mother immediately shut him down. She accused him of attempting to create problems in my marriage and said he was merely jealous of how close she and Minerva had become. This led to several arguments between my parents, with my mother always taking Minerva's side. The truth emerged in the worst possible way. One day, I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I found Minerva and Jake in our bed. What made it even worse was that they didn't even appear surprised or ashamed when I walked in. Minerva actually had the audacity to say, "I guess we need to talk." I packed a bag immediately and went to my parents' house, expecting support and comfort. Instead, I found my mother more concerned about Minerva than about me. She kept saying things like, "Everyone makes mistakes," and "You need to forgive her for the sake of your marriage." She actually called Minerva while I was still sitting there, telling her to come over so we could work things out. 2 weeks later, Minerva announced she was pregnant. I was immediately suspicious about the timing, as we hadn't been intimate for almost 2 months before I discovered her infidelity. When I voiced my doubts about the paternity, my mother exploded in a way I'd never seen before. She said I was being cruel and that regardless of who the father was, I needed to step up and take responsibility because DNA doesn't matter, family is family. I filed for divorce immediately, but Minerva contested it with my mother's full support, both emotionally and financially. To my absolute shock and horror, my mother actually testified against me in court, claiming I was an absent husband who drove Minerva to seek comfort elsewhere. She told the judge that Minerva's baby deserved a stable home and that I had the means to provide for them both. My mother even offered to help pay Minerva's legal fees, using money from her retirement savings to do so. My father tried to reason with my mother, but she wouldn't listen. She kept insisting that this baby was her chance to finally have the granddaughter she always wanted, regardless of biology. The judge ordered a paternity test once the baby was born, but my mother continued to support Minerva throughout her pregnancy, buying baby clothes and helping her set up a nursery in my old bedroom at their house. This whole situation has torn my family apart. My father barely speaks to my mother now, and I'm still trying to understand how my mother could betray me like this. The paternity test is scheduled for after the birth, but my mother insists it doesn't matter what the results show. She expects me to be a man and raise this child regardless. Update 1: The situation has significantly worsened since my last post, and I need to get this off my chest. 2 days after my original post, Minerva moved in with my parents because she claimed she had nowhere else to go. Her lease was up on her old apartment, and she said she couldn't afford a new place since she wasn't working. Jake apparently wanted nothing to do with the pregnancy and blocked her number. When I heard this through my father, I wasn't surprised. Jake had a reputation for avoiding responsibility, something I later learned was a major pattern in his life. My mother completely reorganized their house to accommodate Minerva. She transformed my old bedroom into a nursery, spending thousands of dollars on baby furniture, clothes, and decorations. She even started a baby fund using money she and my father had been saving for their retirement. When my father objected to this, she told him he was being selfish and that this baby needed to be our priority now. The atmosphere at family gatherings has become unbearable. My mother has been parading Minerva around at every family function, introducing her as her pregnant daughter and telling everyone how excited she is about her first grandchild. She's even initiated a group chat with all the female relatives to plan a baby shower, completely disregarding the fact that I'm in the process of divorcing Minerva and the baby might not even be mine. Last week, I received some devastating information from Emma, the mutual friend who initially introduced me to Minerva. She called me, clearly upset, and said she couldn't remain silent any longer. According to Emma, Minerva and Jake had been having an affair for months before I discovered them. They would meet at his apartment during her supposed volunteer work at the local community center. Minerva had never actually performed any volunteer work. It was all a cover for her meetings with Jake. But the most shocking part of Emma's revelation was that my mother knew about the affair. Emma had seen my mother, Minerva, and Jake having lunch together at a cafe about 2 months before I caught them. When Emma approached their table, my mother seemed embarrassed but quickly recovered, introducing Jake as Minerva's old friend who's helping her with some community projects. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I drove to my parents' house immediately to confront my mother. To my surprise, she didn't even attempt to deny it. She admitted knowing about Minerva and Jake's affair for at least 2 months before I found out. Her justification was that she didn't tell me because she was afraid I would leave Minerva and abandon the baby. This was before we even knew Minerva was pregnant. My mother's explanation was like a knife to my heart. She said she had always wanted a daughter and grandchildren, and that Minerva's pregnancy was a blessing in disguise, regardless of how it happened. She actually told me that she saw this as her second chance at having the daughter she always wanted and that she wasn't going to let my pride obstruct that. When I asked her how she could betray her own son this way, she uttered something that will haunt me forever. Sometimes being a mother means making hard choices. Minerva needs me more than you do right now. She seemed to have completely convinced herself that supporting Minerva was the correct course of action, regardless of how much it hurt me. My father was in the garage during this conversation, but he heard everything. He came inside looking angrier than I've ever seen him. He confronted my mother about keeping Minerva's affair a secret, asking her how she could do this to their son. My mother's response was to accuse him of never understanding her pain of losing a child and never having a daughter. She said he couldn't possibly comprehend what this meant to her. My father moved into the spare bedroom that night and barely speaks to her now. He calls me daily to check on me and apologizes constantly for not seeing the situation more clearly from the beginning. He's talking about selling their house. He says he can't live under the same roof as my mother anymore. The rest of our family is divided over this situation. Some relatives, particularly the older generation, support my mother's stance about family being family and think I should take responsibility regardless of the paternity. Others are disgusted by my mother's betrayal and have stopped speaking to her altogether. My aunt, my mother's sister, actually told me that my mother's behavior reminds her of how she acted after my brother died, completely irrational and unwilling to listen to reason. Minerva has been telling everyone who will listen that I'm the father and that I'm abandoning her and the baby. She's playing the victim perfectly, posting tearful updates on social media about how hard it is to be a single mother-to-be. My mother supports her narrative, making me appear like the villain who abandoned his pregnant wife over a simple mistake. I've lost friends over this. People I've known for years have taken Minerva's side, believing her version of events. Some have stopped speaking to me entirely, while others send me messages telling me I need to man up and take responsibility. My mother has been fueling this by telling people that I'm being stubborn and cruel, refusing to support my wife and child during a difficult time. The stress is affecting every aspect of my life. I've had to take time off work because I couldn't focus. My boss has been understanding, but I know this can't continue indefinitely. I've started seeing a counselor to help me process this betrayal, but it's hard to move forward when the situation keeps getting worse. Yesterday, Minerva announced on social media that she's having a girl. My mother shared the post, adding a long comment about how blessed she is to finally have a granddaughter and how she can't wait to share all the mother-daughter experiences she never got to have. She didn't even acknowledge that the paternity is in question or that I'm her actual child who's hurting through all of this. I'm trying to remain strong and wait for the paternity test, but watching my mother choose my cheating ex-wife over me is breaking my heart. The woman who raised me, who taught me about honesty and integrity, is now actively assisting someone who betrayed me and might be attempting to trap me into raising another man's child. The baby is due in 4 months, and I honestly don't know how much worse this situation can get before then. My lawyer says I have a strong case, especially with the evidence of the affair, but watching my family disintegrate like this is more painful than any legal battle. Update 2: the baby was born yesterday, and everything has finally come to light in the most dramatic way possible. I've been sitting here for hours trying to process everything that's happened in the last 48 hours, but I need to share this update. Minerva went into labor 2 weeks early. My mother called me 6 times in the span of an hour, leaving increasingly angry voicemails about how I needed to be at the hospital because my daughter was being born. I ignored the calls, but my father kept me updated about what was happening. The baby girl was born healthy, weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces. My mother posted pictures on social media almost immediately, announcing the arrival of her first grandchild without any mention of the pending paternity test. The hospital conducted the paternity test this morning, and as I suspected, I am not the father. The test confirmed that Jake is the biological father. But here's where things get even more twisted. Right after getting the results, I received a call from Lisa, Minerva's sister. Lisa was crying and apologizing, saying she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. She revealed that Minerva and Jake had been dating secretly for over 6 years, even before I met Minerva. They never broke up, as Minerva had claimed. Jake wasn't ready for marriage or a baby, so they hatched a plan together. Minerva would find someone stable and successful to marry, all while continuing her relationship with Jake. I was their target because of my good job and what Lisa called my nice guy reputation. According to Lisa, Minerva had initially planned to pass off any baby she had with Jake as mine, but they hadn't planned on her getting pregnant so soon. When I caught them together, they had to accelerate their timeline. Lisa shared screenshots of text conversations between Minerva and Jake discussing their plan, including messages from before our wedding where they joked about how well their scheme was working. But the most devastating part was learning about my mother's involvement. Lisa revealed that my mother had discovered their plan about 3 months into my marriage with Minerva. She had borrowed Minerva's phone to make a call and saw some of the texts between Minerva and Jake. Instead of telling me, my mother confronted Minerva privately. Minerva, being the manipulator she is, played perfectly into my mother's desperate desire for a daughter and grandchild. Minerva convinced my mother that Jake was her true love, but that she needed financial stability that he couldn't provide. She promised my mother that once she had a baby, she would let my mother be the primary grandmother and would even name the baby after her. My mother, so desperate for the daughter and granddaughter relationship she'd always wanted, agreed to keep their secret. I was shaking with anger after hearing all this. I took the paternity test results and all the screenshots Lisa had sent me, and I created a detailed social media post. I tagged everyone who had called me a deadbeat, everyone who had sided with Minerva, and everyone who had cut ties with me over this situation. I included screenshots of the texts between Minerva and Jake, messages showing their years-long relationship, and their discussions about using me for financial stability. The response was overwhelming. People who had sided with my mother and Minerva started sending me apologetic messages. Former friends who had cut ties were begging for forgiveness. Minerva's sister even went public with more details about their scheme, including how Minerva and Jake had laughed about my mother's support of their plan. My mother's reaction to all this was perhaps the most surprising. Instead of admitting her mistake or apologizing, she doubled down. She showed up at my apartment hysterical, saying that none of this changed anything. She still insisted that I should be the bigger person and raise this child because she's innocent in all this and DNA doesn't define family. She actually tried to argue that this was God's plan to give her the granddaughter she always wanted. My father, who was at my apartment when she arrived, finally snapped. He told her she needed professional help and that her obsession with having a daughter had destroyed our family. He announced right there that he was filing for divorce. My mother broke down completely, alternating between begging him to stay and accusing us both of being cruel and unfeeling. Minerva tried to do damage control by claiming she had developed real feelings for me during our marriage and that she had planned to end things with Jake. But then Lisa revealed even more texts, showing how Minerva and Jake had been mocking me throughout our entire relationship, even on our wedding day. There were messages making fun of how I believed Minerva's volunteer work story and jokes about my mother's desperation for a granddaughter. Jake finally broke his silence today, posting a public apology on Facebook, not to me, but to Minerva, for not being ready for marriage sooner and promising to step up now that the truth is out. He didn't acknowledge the years of deception or the pain they caused, instead painting it as a love story where he finally realized he was ready to be a father. My father met with a divorce lawyer this afternoon. He's staying with me while they sort out the legal details. My mother has been calling and texting us both constantly, switching between anger and pleading. She's still insisting that walking away from her granddaughter is unforgivable, regardless of the circumstances. I've blocked Minerva, Jake, and my mother on everything. My lawyer is preparing a statement to ensure I have no legal obligations to the baby, though given the paternity test results and all the evidence that's come to light, he says there's no chance I could be held responsible. This whole situation has shown me who my real family is, and sometimes it's not the people who share your blood. My father has been my rock through all of this, and I'm grateful that at least one of my parents chose to stand by me. Update 3: A lot has happened since my last update, and I feel like I need to share the aftermath of everything that went down. The fallout from the paternity test revelation and Minerva's exposed deception has had far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. My parents' divorce was finalized last month. My father got a fair settlement, including half of their savings that my mother hadn't already spent on Minerva and the baby. The judge was particularly unsympathetic to my mother after learning how she had used their retirement funds to support Minerva's deception. My mother was forced to sell their house to settle the division of assets. She bought a small condo just 3 blocks away from Minerva's new apartment, which tells you everything you need to know about her priorities. My father has moved in with me temporarily while he looks for his own place. The change in him since leaving my mother has been remarkable. He started working out, joined a local golf club, and even began dating again last week. He told me he hasn't felt this free in decades. He admitted that my mother's obsession with having a daughter had been a dark cloud over their marriage for years, even before Minerva came into the picture. Minerva and Jake's situation has imploded spectacularly. They moved in together after the paternity reveal, playing the happy family on social media, but things quickly went south. Jake lost his job after his employer discovered he'd been lying about taking sick days to meet Minerva during our marriage. His boss's wife follows me on Facebook and saw my exposure post. Minerva tried getting a job at several local businesses, but her reputation preceded her. No one wants to hire someone known for such elaborate deception. My mother, unbelievably, is still fully committed to playing grandmother. She watches the baby 4 days a week while Minerva looks for work and Jake does odd jobs. She's spending what's left of her savings on baby clothes and supplies. She even threw a grandmother and granddaughter photo shoot last month and plastered the pictures all over her new social media accounts. She made new ones after most people unfollowed her old ones. The most shocking part is that my mother has started telling people a new narrative. She's now claiming she always knew Minerva and Jake were meant to be together and that she facilitated their reunion because she could see they were soulmates. She's trying to paint herself as some kind of romantic hero who helped true love prevail. A few distant relatives are actually buying the story, praising her for putting love first. Last week, Minerva reached out through her lawyer, asking if I would consider adopting the baby, since Jake isn't proving to be reliable father material. She had the audacity to suggest that since I almost was the father anyway, I should step in now that Jake is struggling to provide. My mother followed up with a long email supporting this idea, saying it would heal our family. I forwarded both messages to my lawyer without responding. The baby is 6 months old now, and my mother has fully embraced her role as grandma despite having no biological connection to the child. She's created an entire Instagram account dedicated to posting daily pictures of the baby with captions about her granddaughter. She even hired a professional genealogist to try to find some distant connection between our families to justify her claim to grandmotherhood. My father's divorce lawyer recently informed us that my mother has been borrowing money from various relatives, claiming it's for family emergencies. We've since learned she's been giving this money to Minerva and Jake to help them make rent and buy baby supplies. Several family members have cut contact with her after discovering this deception. I've maintained complete no contact with my mother, Minerva, and Jake. I blocked every phone number and social media account they might use to reach me. They've tried to get messages to me through mutual acquaintances, but I've made it clear that anyone who acts as their messenger will also be cut off. My mother still sends cards and letters to my office, since she can't get my home address, begging me to reconcile with my sister, as she's now referring to Minerva, which is a whole new level of disturbing, and accept my niece. Yes, she's really trying to reframe her relationship to the baby this way. Every letter goes straight into the shredder. The silver lining in all of this is that my father and I have become closer than ever. We have dinner together several times a week, and he's been my strongest supporter throughout this whole ordeal. He's helped me see that my mother's behavior isn't my fault, and that her issues run much deeper than the situation with Minerva. I've started dating again recently, very casually, and I'm focused on my career. I got another promotion at work, and I'm planning to buy a house in a different neighborhood, further away from my mother's new condo. My father plans to move to the same area once he finds a place. Some people have suggested that I should try to forgive my mother, saying she's acting out of grief and trauma from losing my brother all those years ago. But watching her actively choose to support the people who deceived and betrayed me, and then try to rewrite history to justify her choices, has shown me who she really is. Some bridges, once burned, should stay broken. This will probably be my final update. I'm ready to close this chapter of my life and move forward without the toxic influence of my mother and the constant drama of Minerva and Jake's lies. Thank you to everyone who supported me throughout this journey.